Now I want to turn to the University of New Haven in Connecticut. Stanley Heller, you're Executive Director of the Middle East Crisis Committee, also a member of the Coalition to End the U.S.-Saudi Alliance. Talk about what happened at UNH and at Yale.
Good morning, Amy. We have been alarmed for about a year and a half that the University of New Haven has a program, kind of secretive, we don't know exactly what it is, to have its Henry C. Lee College that specializes in forensic and police work, helping the King Fahd Security College. And this is a college where all the police in Saudi Arabia go for training. We wrote to them. We had a letter signed by nearly 50 prominent Americans telling them, warning them about Saudi Arabia. We got no response at all. So that was about a year ago. Then the Khashoggi killing, and we started wondering what is, what is going on. And the Turkish sources started saying, leaking, that the alleged killer was a man named Salah al-Tubaigi, a top forensic scientist. So we're starting to think forensic scientists, that's some of the things that Henry C. Lee College is famous for. And we did some poking around on some Saudi websites, and we saw the editorial board of a Saudi forensic society had on it Henry Lee and a Dr. Salah Tubaigi. This was extraordinary. And so we send out press releases and been trying to get some response to the university. The university in a year and a half has never said a word to us, but they do say some things to the media. The first response was, well, we're told that it's a different al-Tubaigi. The spelling is different and so on. That seemed pretty odd that there'd be two Saudi top forensic scientists with the name al-Tubaigi. So we wrote to that society and asked them, is there a second al-Tubaigi? A Hartford Courant reporter also did the same and never got a response. And then just a couple days ago on that editorial board page in English, Salah Tubaigi's name was removed. So we think that theory of the two al-Tubaigis has been put to rest.
Stanley Heller, we have to break. We have to break, but we're going to do part 2 of this. We're going to post online at democracynow.org. We've got to end the show. Stanley Heller, Executive Director of the Middle East Crisis Committee, and Yardam Kat. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan urges Saudi Arabia to disclose who ordered the murder of the Saudi journalist, the Washington Post columnist Jamal Kahshoggi, we end today's show looking at how U.S. universities are facing new scrutiny over their close ties to Saudi Arabia in the wake of Khashoggi's murder. We're continuing our discussion with 2 guests, Yardam Katz, Department Fellow in Systems Biology at Harvard Medical School, who wrote an article for The Guardian on Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's visit to Harvard and MIT earlier this year. His piece, focusing on the kingdom's close ties to U.S. universities, is headlined, "Elite Universities Are Selling Themselves, and Look Who's Buying." And in Hartford, Connecticut, we're joined by Stanley Heller, Executive Director of the Middle East Crisis Committee, also a member of the Coalition to End the U.S.-Saudi Alliance. We're going to pick up with Stanley Heller where we left off. Stanley, the information you have is so explosive, so important. You're exposing the ties and the visit of the Crown Prince to the University of New Haven and Yale University. And this was before the murder of Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, which at this point, though their stories have changed many times, the Saudi regime has admitted. There apparently was a kind of 15-man hit team, came in on 2 Saudi jets hours before Jamal Khashoggi went into the consulate to get some marriage documents he needed. His Turkish fiancée was standing outside waiting for him. And among those who apparently were in that hit team was a man named Salah Mohammed Al-Tubaigi. A leading forensic doctor, member of the Society of Forensic Medicine at King Fahd Security College. Can you explain how that relates to the University of New Haven?
We had objected to the University of New Haven having any ties with that King Fahd Security College or Saudi Arabia as a whole. And then, after the Khashoggi killing, we looked at websites and noticed that the editorial board of a top Saudi forensic society included Salah Al-Tubaigi and Henry C. Lee, who is the famous forensic scientist at the University of New Haven. And so this is what we brought up. At first, the university said that we think there are 2 Al-Tubaigis. We're getting this information from the Saudis. But that pretty much has been exploded. And the name Salah Al-Tubaigi has been taken off that editorial board's website. Then the university said and says, well, we're proud of what we do. We're improving the justice system of Saudi Arabia. And our response was, well, what are the facts about this? What evidence? Have you been able to convince the Saudi government to give the remains of Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr back to his family? They executed this peaceful activist at the beginning of 2016, and his body has not been returned. Have they canceled the sentence of 1,000 lashes against Raif Badawi? What about the women who had been for a long time trying to get the right to drive, these feminist activists? They're in jail. How is the Saudi justice system improved? And as a last example, what about what happened when they grabbed the Saudi billionaires last fall? Was there any kind of due process? They stuck them in a hotel, the Ritz-Carlton.
The Crown Prince, what you're talking about, had this group of princes held.
That's right. And they were held in this hotel. They coughed up billions of dollars, and then they let them go. Was there any due process? Was there any lawyers involved? Any charges? Anything given to the public about this? And of course, the answer is no. So how is UNH helping? This is wrong. And that's the big scandal. UNH, none of these colleges should be helping. There's also the question of Yale University, if we can get into that. You mentioned the $10 million this billionaire Kamel family has given to the Yale Law School. We objected to that when that first happened a while back. But what we said is, all right, you have this Islamic center, you're interested in law, Yale University, let's have an emergency conference talking about the state of law in Saudi Arabia. So we sent a letter to the Yale University. We've mentioned this to the press. We have not yet gotten an answer from Yale. But students at universities around the country should use this opportunity and have conferences of their own. We used to call them teach-ins. It was a combination of a conference and a protest. So we shouldn't lose this opportunity. There should be protests like occurred at MIT. There were protests, effective ones, against cluster bombs in Rhode Island. This goes back a couple of years ago, and the Obama administration actually stopped it. And there's been the marvelous Code Pink protests in Washington, D.C., where they make those mock pictures of Prince Salman, and they have they had one with the royal bone saw. a grisly reminder of what happened in Turkey. So people should get out and protest. And then they should coordinate. Get a hold of us, saudius.org. Contact us to coordinate their protest and educational activities. And also note rpm.world, which is a new anti-war network which combines support for Palestinians and the Syrian democracy movement in opposition to the Saudis and our road to climate destruction.
The Turkish government reportedly has audio recordings showing that Khashoggi was dragged screaming from the consul general's office, forced onto a table in a room, injected with an unknown substance. This is all the sort of reports that have come out over the last few weeks. Khashoggi was then reportedly dismembered by a Saudi forensic doctor and autopsy expert. This is an amazing story. Allegedly, now we don't know, Tubaigi, who listened to music on headphones as he used a bone saw to cut a still-breathing Khashoggi into pieces. Now, again, these are reports gotten from all different places in the media. Reportedly took Jamal Kahshoggi 7 minutes to die. This from Middle East Eye. The forensic doctor, Salah Mohammed al-Tubaigi, put on the earphones and listened to music as he advised other members of the squad to do the same, saying, when I do this job, I listen to music. You should do that too. Tubaigi was recorded as saying, according to this source who was talking to the news organization Middle East Eye. Stanley Heller, as you listen to this, let's talk more about the University of New Haven's response and its connection to the center where he works. He's a board member of the Society of Forensic Medicine at King Fahd Security College. I do want to turn to the University of New Haven and its partnership with this college in Riyadh. The Hartford Courant recently asked the university spokeswoman, Lynn Chamberlain, about the collaboration. Chamberlain said in a statement that UNH was approached by the Saudi College for guidance as it transitioned to offering 4-year degrees. She wrote, the goal then is now was to help modernize and professionalize criminal justice activities in Saudi Arabia through this educational partnership. We've been pleased with the academic professionalism of our partners, and we look forward to continuing the relationship. If you could take it from there, Stanley Heller.
Well, we've called on political leaders in Connecticut, both federal and state, to mount an investigation to see what exactly UNH is doing with King Fahd Security College, to see if there's any connection between UNH staff and this guy al-Tubaigi or any of the others who were alleged to take part in this killing. I'm pleased to say Senator Blumenthal has responded and has asked that the UNH College reevaluate its program with King Fahd Security College. I'm hoping that other political leaders, other members of Congress and state officials will also make statements about this.
And again,
but it's a very serious thing.
For people who didn't hear the first part of this discussion, while you're saying you don't absolutely know we're talking about the same Tubaigi, that from the website of the King Fahd Security College, now of which he was a board member, his name has been removed as you've been pressuring the University of New Haven to find out more information. Is that right?
Well, they took his name off the editorial board, but curiously, they didn't take his name off the governing board of the Forensic Society. It's still there in Arabic, and if you use the Google translator, it's the same name in English. So I don't know why they didn't do this. It's laziness or whatnot, but the name is still there on the governing board.
Yarden Katz was just talking to us, who is a department fellow in systems biology at Harvard Medical School, about, well, Yarden, let's go to you. About this issue of university ties, you are most concerned about Harvard right now and MIT, the Crown Prince visiting both. Stanley Heller, you are head of the Middle East Crisis Committee, also a member of the Coalition to End the U.S.-Saudi Alliance. Let me put that same question to you. Are staff, professors, students reaching out to you around the country? And even at University of New Haven and at Yale, what has been the response on campus to the work you're doing?
Well, I would second the notion that our problem is certainly not with any of the colleges, but with the administration, who are looking at the money and the false glory of this. And we've had some people reaching out. We're happy to say that the student newspaper at UNH, the Charger Bulletin, has done some fine reporting about this and has printed out our material, even though their administration has never said a word to us about any of our complaints about King Fahd Security College.
What are your plans now?
Well, again, education and protest and coordination, and particularly working on the website of the SaudiUS.org. We understand Kathy Kelly and Voices for Creative Nonviolence is going to do a demonstration in Washington, D.C. on Election Day. Action Corps New York City has done a lot of good protests. I think they did 3 or 4 protests when Prince Salman was in New York City earlier this year. So there's a lot of groups, not a lot, but there are a good number of groups doing a lot of good work. The Catholic Worker Movement, I should say, they've been having a vigil about Yemen in New York for a long time. So people should try to, come to our site, and we'll hook people up to various activities all around the country.
And Stanley Heller, as you talk about grassroots groups, this has gone to very much into the establishment and mainstream, particularly in Connecticut. I can't think of 2 more vocal senators on this issue than Senator Chris Murphy, as well as Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal. Senator Blumenthal said all American businesses and nonprofit organizations should review and reevaluate their relationships with Saudi Arabia in light of the murder, which seemingly could not have been done without knowledge at the highest levels of its government.
A very strong statement.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being with us, and of course we'll continue to follow this issue. Stanley Heller, Executive Director of the Middle East Crisis Committee, also member of the Coalition to End the U.S.-Saudi Alliance. And thank you very much to Yarden Katz, Department Fellow in Systems Biology at Harvard Medical School, an affiliate of the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society at Harvard University. And Yarden, we'll link to your article in The Guardian on Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's visit to Harvard and MIT, that piece that's headlined, "Elite Universities Are Selling Themselves and Look Who's Buying." This is Democracy Now! To see part 1 of our discussion, go to democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.